Okay, ready to go?
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Scott Steen, Executive Director of the American Physiological Society. I'm here today with Rick Samson, President of the American Physiological Society and Professor of Pharmacology and Physiology and Director of Biomedical Science graduate programs in the School of Medicine at St. Louis University. Also joining us is Mark Engle, a leading nonprofit governance expert and principal at the Association Management Center. Welcome, gentlemen. And as APS is in the midst of a major governance modernization project, we're going to do something a little bit different today and talk about the role of governance at APS and why we've taken on such a big initiative at this time. Our conversation today will be excerpted in the Evolution column in APS's Physiologist magazine. So good morning, gentlemen. Great to have you both here. Mark, I am going to start with you. I'm wondering if you could tell us what governance is and why it matters to APS members.
Great. Thanks, Scott. It's a pleasure to be with you and Rick today. And talking about governance, my favorite topic. And governance is all about getting the right things done, prioritizing and supporting them. But it really is an attempt to drive value to the members and get succinct in focusing on the member value and what they want, when they want it, and how they want it. When we think about governance, there's really three primary legs to the stool. The first one is around strategy, which does approach getting to member value. The second is around structure, and that's how we do that, how we encourage members to engage, what that looks like, some structural elements within the organization. And then the third element is really around culture. And that's where we get the soft side of the business about relationships, and sometimes some elements that really enhance member value, and sometimes elements that really inhibit driving value to the membership. And so we look at the three of them coming together: strategy, structure, and culture. And that's what we examine under the lens of governance today.
So, I think people, when they think about governance, they think of the board. In our case, we call it the council right now. And is it more than that, or it's really focused there?
Well, what we see actually is a flattening of structures. So it is broader than it was of yesteryear, if you will. When we created these organizations, and some of them are 100 years old, we looked at the structural elements and the authority elements and the ability to really represent membership in a robust way, but in a timeliness that was not even on the radar screen in today's environment. We had weeks to make decisions, or months to make decisions, or years to make decisions. Change was slow to come. And organizations within our capacity in the association community are under kind of an assault today, frankly, in governance, in competition for members' time, for their resources, particularly financial resources too. And so we see that whole landscape directly impacting how we look at the structural elements of governance. And so we've seen the capacity to bring governance to more of a flattened structure to drive value to the members, so we can be market responsive in many idea, if you will, of driving value to the members of where they want to find it and how they want to find it and when they want to find it. Those dynamics are so different today. The business elements have changed dramatically.
At APS, we think of a 100-year-old organization as relatively new. It's a kind of a baby organization. We've been around a lot longer than that.
Well, the oldest association predates the founding of the United States, actually.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, these are very old organizations. I mean, many of them, particularly science organizations. Rick, so we just launched a new annual meeting, the summit, and we are dealing with the impending challenges of moving to open access future for our journals. We have dozens of other things going on. We are lots of challenges, lots of new opportunities and initiatives. Why is APS taking on this really big initiative now?
Well, my answer would be, why not? We're all very busy, but this is a very important issue. We haven't changed governance in over 40 years. And as Mark says, culture is a really important part of our society, as with all societies. And culture has changed. We have a broad and diverse membership. We have a structure that some feel does not serve all corners of that membership. And we are looking at financial exigency here with the loss of revenue from open access. So as we consider how we're going to deal with the loss of revenue, we have to consider at the same time, are there programs that we no longer can afford? Or are there programs that should be replaced because there are aspects of our current culture which have yet to be served? So now is actually a very good time to do it. Yes, everyone's busy, but the imperative is you have to get jobs like this done, and you can't just let them sit. It would affect the society negatively. We're in an important point in our existence. We need to grow. We are growing a little bit now, but we need to grow more.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. I mean, you think of how the world was different 40 years ago. It was, I mean, our membership was almost entirely male. It was pre-internet. It was, I mean, the expectation of, we were using mimeograph machines, it was an entirely different world then. And now the expectation of making decisions is so much that you make decisions much, much faster because change is happening so fast. And so I guess you're absolutely right. With all that's going on, this is sort of the perfect time. And we have to do this in order to address
I don't think we have any choice, especially since we have financial issues, but we also have these cultural issues that the current structure, I don't believe, serves. And the society is only as successful as all of its members, and we need to pay attention to that. By the way, I joined the society 40 years ago, and so I sent a cashier's check to pay for my first membership.
What's a cashier's check?
Yeah, it's a different time. And so, Mark, what do you see as, I mean, how has governance evolved in 40 years? What do you see as the most important trends for societies like APS?
Well, first of all, our ability to capture information and data is so robust today, right? And we don't need to go to an annual meeting physically to get people's input and so on, of course, right? And so we can gauge what is going on in our community electronically, via social media, via listservs, or all sorts of different technologies, and get people together. So we're feeding ourselves with more information than we can possibly process. And then what we do is we bring that information together and make sense of it. And that's a smaller group that's able to process that information to look for trends, changes that we need to be reflective of. And again, where are our members seeking information and how are they doing that today? Where are they working? It's a very different question today. How are they working is a very different question today with those answers. And their expectations have changed so dramatically. So we look through this governance as a lens of what's going on in that, if you will, the business environment, let alone the intellectual environment, but our capacity to gather information, to gather people, to process that, and then they create new programs or frankly, terminate ones that are no longer productive. What does that look like? Making those decisions are primarily business decisions when we think about it. And why would we convolute that with this enormous structural process that did work in the old days, but no longer allows us to be healthy and competitive and proactive?
I mean, I would imagine that agility, I mean, is such an important part of the equation now, that being able to act quickly and but also taking in a lot of information from your members.
Right. Look at the business skills on your staff today compared to where they were 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. The business acumen of associations has changed dramatically. And the ability that we have to process information and to say, this is where the members really want to go. How do we get tools and programs there that are meaningful to them? What does that look like? Those dynamics are very different than writing a book that we used to do 20 years ago, or creating a course where people would come together and so on. Those dynamics are very different. The business skills are very different today than they have been in the past.
So I think a lot of members of societies think of governance, and in these organizations, like they think of, any representative elected body like Congress or city council or a faculty senate for that matter. I mean, our members are primarily academics. And how would you say nonprofit boards match up to those kind of governance bodies? How are they similar or different?
Have you ever heard any of those that you used as examples described as high functioning organizations? I mean, granted, they provide value, but the way they get it done is frankly archaic when we think about it. And so what we're trying to do is align the skills. In fact, what we see as leadership team composition is driven by competencies today. And it's not that we have incompetent people in leadership. The question is, what competencies do we need? What types of backgrounds? And so we're seeing leadership teams, especially in the volunteer area, comprised very differently. What are the competencies we need to drive strategy for the organization future? Because the strategy is what begets member value. So looking at how those align is very differently today. And then we have all sorts of research on the dynamics of decision-making in a group model. In fact, my doctoral research was around group decision-making at boards, and it was based on the garbage can theory, which means it's pretty ugly, but it usually results in a very positive, productive decision if we affect it right. Those dynamics is what we're trying to bring in the governance space in our community today. We don't need 200 people to make a decision today. We need 200 or 400 or 1,000 people to inform decisions, but not make decisions. And so we look at that element around authority. That's kind of what you're describing in Congress and so on. And it's not about fighting for our local fiefdom, as it is realizing what is the value for the greater good, and then how do we deliver that more on a unique basis.
You've talked a lot about the idea that the role of a society board or council is really to focus solely on the greater good. It's for the whole. How do you balance the idea of transparency and with that kind of importance of sort of protecting the space so that people can make the best decision for the greater good?
There's two primary researchers in this space. One passed away, Bennis, and the other Bernstein out of Harvard, have done some wonderful research on transparency. And basically what they talk about is informing widely, getting that robust set of information. You can ask broadly, get a lot of input, and then you process it in a smaller basis. And we realize that associations, and APS is a large, robust enterprise when we think about it. You have all the opportunities before you, but you do have a limitation, and especially as Rick mentioned, with some of the funding issues coming before you and this community, prioritization is really critical. So we have to process all these opportunities and start prioritizing them. And that makes it more, as Bernstein will say, in a more of a protected environment where we have to safeguard the ability to challenge each other on decision-making and priority setting in a smaller, limited basis, and then communicate where are we going, what are we doing, what is the value for members on a very large, robust basis. It's kind of like a bow tie, wide information flowing in, protect that element of actually allocating limited resources, and then communicating very broadly, where are we going, what do we decide, and what does it mean for our members? How are we driving that value?
So we're trying to get lots of input, but then sort of drive out as much of the politics and that centered decision-making as we can, and then projecting it back out widely.
Yeah. Let's look at Congress as your example, Scott, right? I mean, when we go public on it, we create these stands and so on. We're not talking about the greater good of the organization. Look at Congress. It's not about the greater good of the United States of America, as it does get to districts or states in so many regards. And that's not high functioning in the context of a high, well-run association like APS.
So Rick, what are your hopes for this initiative? What would you like to see us accomplish?
Well, all the things that Mark is saying. We have to be better at getting a broad spectrum of information from our members. I think our current structure only allows us to receive information from limited groups, and it leaves other people out. I would hope that we are able, as Mark said, to establish leadership based on competency not based on popularity or fiefdoms. So changing the way we gather information and appreciate the situations of all of our members and what their needs and what their contributions are. And then having a group of competency-based leaders who can make those decisions. The final step is we've got to do a better job with transparency. I think this is what's been bleeding air out of our tires. Members constantly are coming up to me saying, why did this decision get made? Who made this decision? We have to be better at communicating the effort we took to make a decision, who made it, why it was made, and how it's going to affect everyone. So my hope is we can get to that point.
You know, Scott, if I might add,
Sure, please.
that competency is also driven by experience and background. You know, for instance, when we look at a lot of board composition, we see people who are, you know, old like me, AARP members, if you will. And when we look at the dynamics of our membership, you know, they are so much younger, and that's the area we really need to attract. So do we have those types of competencies and backgrounds to inform decision-making at that high level? So that whole area of competency is also driven by diverse backgrounds, whether it's career stage, whether it's race, ethnicity, practice setting, what have you, and making sure that it's robust to help inform strategy for the future.
Great. And so finally, Rick, when do you think members should expect to see some of these changes? What is the timeline there where people will actually get to see the change?
Well, time's our most important currency, I think, when we make change like this. We're having a leadership retreat this summer when hopefully the task force, which has been assembled and will be meeting in person next month, will present an example of where we think we should head so that we can get feedback from our current leaders. It would be nice to get some feedback from them during that period of time. We certainly would like to go to fall council with a proposal that hopefully would be edited, fine-tuned, and then prepared for the members to actually vote on. It'd be nice to get this done before open access rolls down the hill and crushes us. But more importantly, I think we need to serve the members. We've heard that many of the members are not happy with the way leadership is managing the society. We have to address that or we'll lose these people. There are factions within the society that have to be, we can't let them split farther apart than they are already. We need to value everyone and what their contributions are. And I will say something that Mark just brought up. Leadership largely in APS, ever since I've been in, is very, very senior. I think we're doing a much better job in terms of diversity, age, sex, the whole thing. Take a look at our editors of our major journals. We've really got some diversity there. Look what they've done with their editorial boards. We've really got diversity there. We can find a way to bring younger people with new ideas into our leadership structure, but not in the current structure. We need to change our structure so that the young, vibrant people who have a career ahead of them help us make decisions.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, two of our new counselors are sort of women from younger demographic, and we definitely have made strides. I mean, I think now sort of addressing both the culture side and the structure side to bring them, we are making progress, but I think there's certainly a lot of work to do. So the idea here, get broad input from lots and lots of members, create a space where a competency-based space where leaders can make the best decision for the whole, and then broadcast those decisions out, communicate much more widely on the other side. That's kind of it.
That's it.
And thank you both. This has been a great conversation. I think this is a process we will be communicating to our members about regularly over the next several months. And we look forward to everyone joining the conversation. I'd love to hear from you. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Bye, Mark.
Bye now.